Welcome to another scriptural study. In this scriptural word and scriptural astronomical study, we will be exploring the scriptural passage or verse from the book of Job, now known today as Job, in chapter 38, verse 31, where it states, and I quote, "Do you bring out the constellations, or Mazzaroth, in its season? Or do you lead the bear, Ursa Major, with its sons?" This seven-star cluster in the heavens was known as a seasonal clock. Again, Ursa Major proves the length of a scriptural day, and it's not a clockwise 24-hour day. So, as we go through this scriptural study, we are going to find out why these lights on the lampstand, yes, the fully restored moon, as it is aligned with the bear and its two sons, the two sons being the star known anciently as Ash, known today as Arcturus, and the star known as Abib, now known today as Spica. So as we go through the scriptural study, and as always with these formats, please ensure you stop the scriptural study video at any time to ensure that you can focus on both the scriptural and astronomical information being shared. And, as always again, please ensure that your computer monitors are on full view or full screen mode, including if you are using a mobile device. In this scriptural study, the reason that we are doing this is a response to the deGrasse Tyson video that was released back in the pagan month of January 2021. We sincerely apologize for the length of time in responding to this scriptural study video, based on the numerous emails we were getting to respond to that particular video. And thank you, Roger, for your latest email. Hopefully, this scriptural study puts to bed any of your questions. So as we go through this scriptural study, please let's focus on the prophet Yeshayahu or Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 18, which states, and I quote, "Come now, and let us reason together, says Yahuwah, our almighty Father of lights." Yes, the maker of the sun, moon, and stars. Because in this scriptural study video, we're going to talk about preparation being the key. We all have been prepared, like Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, with the world education system, to not focus on all of the evidence from the sun, moon, and stars. And this sounds very arrogant at the start. So in this scriptural study video, we are going to share why we can say that with the utmost of empirical astronomical evidence that we can. And the second reason for this scriptural study video is to share empirical astronomical evidence how Ursa Major proves the length of a scriptural day, which is not 24 hours, and that anyone with a camera can film and photograph, meaning prepare to plan what Ursa Major does in any given day, let alone a new moon day, and prepare for it, and then perform that actual day as originally designed by a designer. So, as we get into this scriptural study, please ensure that pride is concerned with who is right. Please understand this. And that humility is concerned with what is right. Because at the end of the day, our goal on this YouTube channel is to further prove or observe from an empirical astronomical standpoint how the perfect gifts from above, as we can read in James chapter 1, verse 17, are indeed from the Father of lights here and now, in order to give thanks and praise to our Father of lights, in the fact that every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. So that's our purpose and intent of doing these scriptural study videos. And we are fully aware that is not the intent of the many in the world. We get that. Number two, the other purpose and or intent of this scriptural study video is to share with others that there indeed is a way to prepare in advance, here and now, to tell time without the aids of man. any devices, modern devices, or the ancient devices that were used to tell time. Again, the purpose is to ensure that we can properly identify the moadim, meaning new moon days, Sabbath days, and the feast days. So, we are also going to express that the aids of man may have robbed us of all of the empirical astronomical evidence. So this is a very large scriptural study to perform, and we want to ensure that we are doing it with all the humility that is indeed possible. So now let us all reason together and observe all of the evidence or witnesses that we believe are just wonders, and thus the reason why our being observes them. So, without further ado, let's get into the response to the Neil deGrasse Tyson video in full detail. Because this video was released again in the pagan month of January this year in 2021. And he explains the real length of a day is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds, based on the Earth rotating around the sun. And finally, without including the stars and moon to tell time. So his approach is solar-based. And as we go through the scriptural study, this question came up because we present the view from the passage of Job, or Job chapter 38, verses 31 and 32. Because we believe that Ursa Major goes around the North Star in 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds per day. And the math equates to 86,164 seconds per day, which equates to 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds per day. If you multiply that time that Ursa Major goes around the North Star, you multiply it by a solar annual day year of 365.25 days, just like Hanok talked about. That formula or calculation equates to 8,741.89 hours. If you translate that to hours per day, equates to 23.934 hours. If you take those hours and you multiply them, it equates to 364.25 days annually, just like the book of Jubilees and Hanok talked about. If you use the sun and the star calculation, you will equate to 364.25 days in a solar year. If you include the moon in this calculation, yes, 3 witnesses of light, no different than a wristwatch with 3 hands to tell time, a second hand, a minute hand, an hour hand. If you use all of those witnesses in a man-made clock, well, in the heavenly clock, the celestial clock, if you will, it will produce accurate time. And in this case, again, Ursa Major with its 2 suns. On this visual, we are missing Ash or Arcturus and Spica. That is part of the clock. But for this visual and its sake, we will share how this actually works. And it's a seasonal clock as well. Not only is it an hourly clock, it is a seasonal clock. And last but not least, it's been used for thousands of years as a navigational clock, empirically from an astronomical standpoint. You can research this in various websites, encyclopedias, and astronomical journals. All one has to do is search it. So again, when we read this and we start to explore this, even timeanddate.com expresses how to tell time with stars. And it shares how Ursa Major moves in a certain time period, and how anciently, just like we can today, measure this clock with our hands and fingers. It is very basic. In fact, it is so simple that it's scary. And when I say scary, even a Boy Scout can do it. Even the first edition of the Boy Scouts Handbook in 1911 shared how you can actually not get lost in the wilderness and how you can navigate with this clock as well, finding Arcturus and Spica, and how you could actually find the Big Dipper, as they would call it in the Boy Scouts Handbook, all the way to the North Star. And then you get books like this one, Lift Up Your Eyes on High, Understanding the Stars, where it goes into great detail empirically and mathematically from an astronomical standpoint. And it explains all of this in great detail. Again, for thousands and thousands of years, this one 7-star cluster has been used to do many things, include understand when to plant or seed the crops, knowing what season you are actually in. So as we go through this scriptural study video, remember, we do not want anyone to think that we are going against Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, or that Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson is going against this particular YouTube study. Truth be known, Mr. Tyson is far more educated in astronomy than I'll ever be. All we are saying in this scriptural study is that Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson was trained, prepared, or programmed, if you will, like all of us were originally, to be solar focused and not use all of the witnesses of light that exist in the heavens to tell time. That's all of this scriptural study is attempting to share. So again, we don't use the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah as a weapon. All we're sharing is that the efforts of humankind all through time may have been all for naught. And we are going to explore that premise because, just like the rest of us were, we were all prepared and programmed, like Mr. Tyson, that the earth revolves around the sun. That's how we've been prepared. Meanwhile, scripturally, it states in a counterclockwise fashion that Ursa Major goes around Polaris in 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds. Where the video is suggesting, from Mr. Tyson, that the Earth goes around the Sun producing 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. So again, pride is concerned with who is right. Humility is concerned with what is right. So what produces more value? What produces more safety? What is more profitable? What approach is more profitable? Which approach will produce more fruit? That is the purpose of this scriptural study video. And the reason for our response to the Neil deGrasse Tyson video that so many of you have requested. So again, anyone can view this scriptural study video. We certainly do indeed share that. Please watch this video. Watch it and all of the ones like it. So, in this video from Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he explains the real length of a day is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds at the approximate 1 minute and 23 second mark. Number 2, he states that the Earth moves around the Sun in this time period at the approximate 2 minute and 14 second mark. And he admits we presently do not utilize the stars for this. So he also discusses the challenges we have had with measuring time accurately at the approximate 9 minute and 31 second mark as the result of the world breaking up with the moon, so to speak. And or, as the video states, giving up on the moon to tell time. Yes, Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson's approach is solar-based. And he explains in the video in clarity, astronomically, that the Earth revolves around the Sun, producing 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. So how did he get that view? How was he prepared? And we are presenting that we were prepared just like Mr. Tyson was originally going through school, all the way up to high school, college, and some of us in university. Because Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, born on the pagan day of October 5th, 1958, is an American astrophysicist, a planetary scientist and author, and a science communicator. Mr. Tyson studied at Harvard University, the University of Texas at Austin, and Columbia University. From 1991 to 1994, he was a postdoctoral research associate at Princeton University. So when we say preparation is the key, this is how he was prepared through these educational institutions and or systems, if you will. He is quoted as stating, "A most important feature is the analysis of the information that comes your way, in which I and many like me agree." He further states, and that's what I don't see enough in this world. And we agree with that as well. Just use all of the witnesses of light, sun, moon, and stars to tell time, not just a solar-based view. He goes on to say there's a level of gullibility that leaves people susceptible to be taken advantage of. And we agree with this as well. If you're just a solar-based mindset and you don't use the moon and stars as well, you're being taken advantage of. This is what we are saying in these scriptural study videos. Mr. Tyson further states, "I see science literacy as a kind of vaccine against charlatans who would try to exploit your ignorance." We are saying that solar-based views only, a one-witness approach only, is an ignorant approach. It's a charlatan approach. So if you're interested in learning further from Mr. Tyson, and we suggest that you do, please go to this interview by Roger Bingham on the Science Network. Mr. Tyson further states, "Intelligent design is a philosophy of ignorance." It is that you get to something that you don't understand, and then you stop. You say God did it, and you no longer progress beyond that point. We are sharing that that is not true. Now, we don't believe in God on this YouTube channel. That is a man-made title for all mythological heathen deities. We don't believe in God. We believe in Yahuwah. That name means the only self-existent one, the I Am. And at the end of the day, that etymology is not expressed and or explored in the science or university community as well. So moving forward, let's take a look at this a little further. Mr. Tyson is a self-proclaimed agnostic. An agnostic doesn't know for sure whether a creator exists or not. As compared to an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in the existence of a creator. If you get into the definition of agnostic, or that word, from the Oxford dictionaries, it states, "A person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of a possible creator, or of anything beyond material phenomena. A person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in a creator." So from a scriptural standpoint, this is the definition of being Laodicean. You sit on the fence. And what we're proposing in this scriptural study video is that people of the world do sit on the fence. They don't use all three witnesses of light to tell time. They're solar-based, or have been programmed or prepared to be solar-based only. So, no one would argue that a man-made clock is designed. It didn't evolve. It's not random. People with their intellectual design, created this clock with three witnesses. A second hand, as we can see, moving in a clockwise position in this example. And then a minute hand. And then an hour hand. Yes, design demands a designer. So again, Scripture states, do you bring out the constellations in its season, the clock in its proper seasons? Or do you lead the bear, the seven-star cluster Ursa Major, with its sons? So everything that man does is opposite to what Yahuwah does. So man-made clocks work in a clockwise fashion. The clock in the heavens works in a counterclockwise fashion. Just like Scripture was originally written from right to left, man writes everything from left to right and tells time in that manner as well. The final thing that we're presenting in this video is that man, when it comes to time, all through the millennia, were solar-based. They didn't use all three witnesses. No one in their right mind would take away any of the hands in a man-made clock to tell time, because the accuracy of timing would be affected. It would not produce fruit. It's not a safe way of timekeeping. It's not productive. It's not profitable. So that is all we are saying. We are not in a competition with any of the universities or man-made world religions. We are just saying in this scriptural study video, why not use all the witnesses of light to tell time, just like any human would on a man-made clock? So as we go through this study, it becomes apparent that the book of Tehillim, or Psalms, meaning praises, chapter 14, verse 1, may indeed prove that the fool has said in his heart, there is no Father of lights. There is no Yahuwah, the only self-existent one. That's possible. Let's explore if that's true. So if we use all of the witnesses of light and not just a solar-based view, the scriptures state your eyes are to go before all 4 night watches to study the word. So what happens in the first night watch at sunset? Well, in some months, the moon does indeed greet the sun at sunset. That doesn't happen every month. But this is what is called the first watch. This is what it means to come now and let us reason together. And this is what we're doing from a Father of light standpoint, who uses all of the witnesses of light to tell time, not just a solar-based view. So as you can see in the first watch, you can't see any of the scriptural stars. So if this clock is effective, produces fruit, is profitable, if you will, only the second watch starts to reveal the scriptural stars. And that's why our being observes them, all of these witnesses. And through the midnight time period, yes, the second and third watch, all of this scriptural light is on a lampstand for all to see, just like our only teacher had stated. And thus we can tell which season we're in, when it's safe to plant, to be profitable, to be fruitful, if you will. And again, the ancients, for thousands of years throughout the millennia, waited for this sign to plant their seed. Not the eclipse, the vernal equinox. They waited for this. And you can read this empirically, historically, and research the archaeological evidence as well. And then by the start of the fourth watch, the end of the third watch, is the time period of the dawn, where you still can see all of the 3 witnesses of light. The sun being dawn or first light, and the scriptural stars, and the moon. And with a fully restored moon, this is a wonderful witness, and why our being observes it. And it matches the seasons as it relates to Ursa Major. And the morning time period starts again at the end of the third watch, the start of the fourth watch, and that's the full morning time period. So this is the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah, and it's very valuable. It doesn't need any man-made device and or aid. It doesn't need an obelisk. It doesn't need Stonehenge. It doesn't need millions of hours of man-made effort to read time. You can use your fingers and your hands. So again, how many of us, when we were raised in the educational system, were prepared, programmed, if you will, educated, if you will, to understand how the moon, in Psalms 104, verse 19, was made for appointed times, which includes new moon days, or the start or first day of every month? How many of us were programmed to understand that the lesser light was designed to rule the night, and the stars, with the stars, like we just seen? How many of us were programmed and are educated from the writings of Eob or Job chapter 38, verse 31? Do you bring out the constellations in its season? And or do you lead the bear, Ursa Major, with its sons? And in a midnight or between a second and third watch, even the Native American indigenous tribes were educated to plant at this time period, when around the midnight time period they would see Ursa Major in this position pointing to Polaris, the North Star, and that would tell them, not the vernal equinox. They were not solar based. They used these witnesses. And it is a wondrous thing, as we talked about. So again, we are not attacking Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson in any shape, form, or manner. We are attacking the principalities, the world religions all through time that robbed us of how to utilize all three witnesses of light in the Shamayim, or heavens, to tell time. Has nothing to do with Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was prepared in the very same manner we all were originally. When we were young, we were robbed of this information. So again, as you know on this YouTube channel, we look at every month and we measure every day with the sun, moon, and stars in more than one location all over Earth. And we use all of the witnesses of light from the very first watch into the second and third night watches, through the midnight time period, into the dawn, yes, a true day start, and all the way to sunrise, from that dawn morning to the sunrise end of morning time period when the moon greets the sun at sunrise, which doesn't happen every month. And we watch and monitor the full light of the moon in its fully restored state, 100% illuminated, if you will, and how that happens everywhere on Earth. And we watch and observe moonrise and moonset time periods. These are all of the witnesses of light that are available to us, and this is why our being observes them. And this is why we believe that the psalmist stated in chapter 8, verses 3 through 4, and I quote, "For I see your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have established." But that's not the approach of the world and its educational systems, all due to the principalities, those world religions that have all focused on being solar-based only. So that's the response to the Neil deGrasse Tyson video. It's how you're prepared. And when we reason together, it's a regrettable and disappointing venture that the world doesn't reason together with all the witnesses of light. It just doesn't do that at this present time. So again, when you watch this video, Neil explains his solar-based view, that the length of a day is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds, which we agree with. But his view is based on the Earth, a solar-based view rotating around the sun. And number 3, without including the stars and moon to tell time. It's a solar-based view. It's a clockwise view, not a counterclockwise view. And again, if you're going to become an astrophysicist, you're going to have a certain view that intelligent design is a philosophy of ignorance. And some scientists don't agree with this, but at the end of the day, some scientists are not agnostic. So, we have to search the intent of our minds, because pride is concerned with who is right. And if Neil wants to be personally right versus a humble approach, just like the rest of us, he has to truly believe in his sentence. And I quote, "A most important feature is the analysis of the information that comes your way." And that's what I don't see enough in this world. We agree with that statement full-heartedly, because a humble approach is concerned with what is right, and thus won't be a solar view only. It will take into consideration the movement of Ursa Major and the rest of the scriptural stars that we could read about. It will take into consideration the moon as a fully restored moon, as Scripture talks about. It will use all three witnesses of light and not just be solar-based. So let's go through this a little further. Because this principality, the beast, the RCC, believes as well the Earth orbits around the sun, showing its eccentricity. And we can track this, because both Egypt and Babylon did their timekeeping in this very same manner. They were solar-based. They believed in a 24-hour day. Think about Sol Invictus and the beast today. It's what it promotes. And from a scriptural standpoint, we don't find any irony or coincidence that the prophet YAHsome in chapter 29, verse 19 stated, and I quote, "Therefore, thus said the Master Yahuwah, the Father of lights, sun, moon, and stars, all of the evidence, all of the witnesses. See, I'm giving the land of Egypt," which was anciently known as Mitzrayim, "to Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel." And we do know today that Rome is that second beast, as we can read about from the Apostle Kepha, now known today as Peter. So as we get into this study, look at the archaeological evidence. Are we not to come out of Egypt and all forms of paganism? Are we not to come out of Babylon? Yes, Egypt and their thought process or solar-based focus was given to Babel, the land of confusion. The Babylonian calendar was a lunisolar calendar with years consisting of 12 lunar months, each beginning when a New Year crescent moon was first sighted low on the western horizon at sunset. So they started to include the moon, but it was crescent-based, which is non-scriptural. It's certainly part of the world religions to this very day in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity with the worship of Mother Mary, so to speak, which is totally non-scriptural. Did we really need to build obelisks to tell time? Did we really need an obelisk to determine the vernal equinox? Did we really need Stonehenge? All of those millions of hours of man-made effort, yes, that oppression, that did not tell time effectively. Again, what Yahuwah provides, the Father of lights, is something very simple and not chaotic, like these 365 only, 364 only, 364 only, and 354 day only calendar clubs promote. Please watch this video because they are one witness or only two witnesses approaches, which cause great calamity and chaos and regrettably much oppression to humankind, which still do to this very day. It's very regrettable that Sol Invictus has survived throughout the millennia. Preparation is the key. Do you need a sundial to tell time? No, you don't. Do you need to be solar based? So again, you can research this for yourself. You don't need an obelisk to tell time. Again, find out why Caligula, yes, the one that practiced orgies on the Vatican Hill, brought in from Egypt, from Heliopolis, the existing obelisk that you see in the center of Vatican Square. A year is not started with a vernal equinox. You do not have to measure shadows and darkness. And check out this web link from the European Association for Astronomy and Education because it's still pushing a solar-based approach. Go into this website and the examples that the Babylonian system did indeed divide the day into 24 equally long hours beginning at sunrise and ending with the following sunrise. Again, solar-based. And there are people still doing this to this very day. It's embarrassing. Even Italian hours in Rome began counting at sunset, ending 24 hours later with the following sunset. Solar-based. Again, a day is not 24 hours, and it's not solar-based. Unless you want to follow this principality and the world religions, all the way from Egypt, handed over to Babel, the land of confusion, that has regrettably been inherited by Rome to this very day. Just do the math. Be an empirical scientist. Don't be a scientist that's heartfelt on emotion, not utilizing all of the witnesses of light available to tell time. Take a look at, again, the European Association for Astronomy and Education. What is a clock? And it quotes, when ancient peoples put a stick in the ground to observe the movement of its shadow from sunrise to sunset, it was fairly easy and certainly a natural step to mark off noon and other points where the shadow lays at other times of day. In other words, to make a sundial. Sundials can tell time quite reliably when the sun is shining. So again, solar-based. It's non-value added. just like the vernal equinox, which we'll explain in this video as we go through the subject matter. Here's another point. It's called the Sunrise Project. Again, it's to take our young folks and get them to focus on a one-witness approach, a solar-based only focus. The project intends to be a school collaborative project by which the schools can learn more about the sun's apparent movement and about photography using a pinhole camera. Through the technique is in theory quite simple. Pinhole cameras are very didactical, as they allow students to learn about photography theory and practice, and might allow students to obtain very beautiful images. Again, images of what? The sun, but not the moon and the stars. Again, the sun, moon, and stars was created for days, years, months, appointed times, and signs. These folks, these poor children, just like we were, just like Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, was programmed, was prepared to be solar-based originally. We don't have to follow this. So again, Neil is solar-based. We don't blame him for that. It's not his fault. The principality of world religions all through time have programmed him this way. They've prepared him this way, just like the rest of us. So he is trying to explain that the Earth moves around the sun, produces 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. But meanwhile, the scientific community states that Ursa Major goes around the North Star, or Polaris, in 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds. And they don't use the view based on the Earth rotating around the sun. Number 3, he's admitted himself in his own video, without including the stars and moon to tell time. And again, it's solar-based, a sunrise day start. We do not do this on this YouTube channel. And thus the reason why we are focused on proving how the perfect gifts from above actually work. We test and prove. The world jests and attempts to disprove by being solar focused only, and every once in a while add in the lunar-based two-witness approach, but ignores the stars. We don't do this. We use all of the gifts from above, and this is why we give thanks and praise to the Father of Lights. We don't give thanks and praise to the sun, moon, and stars. We give thanks and praise to the Father of Lights, Yahuwah himself, the only self-existent one, for every good and perfect gift that he gave us to tell time. Not just a portion of those witnesses in a small portion of the 4 night watches, but all of the night watches with all the witnesses of light that we can tell time just with our hands. We don't need to spend millions of hours of manpower and oppression to tell time. We just have our hands with our fingers. So let's move on to the second part of this scriptural study and astronomical study on how do we prepare in advance here and now to tell time without the aids of man. We don't need obelisks. We don't need wristwatches. We don't need calendars on a wall. We have the 4 night watches that hang in the heavens, and we can take a simple camera and film and photograph these things. We don't need obelisks. We don't need anything from man to tell time. So the reason of this scriptural study video in its 2 points is coming to a conclusion because we're taking a different approach now, which is more scientific, more astronomically empirical. We're going to use all of the witnesses of light that were created for signs, appointed times, which means new moon days, day 1 of every month, and for all of the work days, the Sabbath days, the feast days, and the years. We don't use the vernal equinox. We're not solar-based only, telling us that's when a year started. We're going to get into that now because the scriptural stars help us with that as well, just as they're laid out in the books of Scripture. We're going to use all of the scriptural stars to tell time, just like the books of Jubilees and the book of Hanok states. Their numbers match up. When you get into the world and the institutions, they don't match. You can't use them. So again, we don't need obelisks. We don't need wristwatches. We don't need GPS. We have all of the tools available in the palm of our hand with our fingers to tell time. It's extremely easy. Please go to this particular site on timeanddate.com to learn further. Please take a look at the multitudes of information that exists out there on how to tell time just with your fingers and your hands. So, again, 86,164 seconds per day is what Ursa Major does in a counterclockwise fashion around Polaris, the North Star. If you take 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds, and you multiply them by a 365.25 solar day year, just like Hanok said, it'll equate to 364 days. And the Book of Jubilees in Hanok stated that the stars and the sun bring in all the years exactly to 364 days in a 365.25 solar day year. So again, at night, during the second and third watch, approximately midnight, you can take a camera and see all of this. You can measure time without man-made devices and use a camera to photograph and film it. You can do all of this. And as we stated, this can happen at the dawn, all three witnesses of light. And this is why a day starts at dawn, because you're using all three witnesses. You're not adding or taking away. You're not a one-witness approach. You're not taking away anything. You're utilizing all of the witnesses of light to tell time. Yes, when a day starts, which is dawn, first light, let alone to tell you which season you're in, which hour, let alone where you are at on Earth. It's a navigational clock as well. So again, pride is concerned with who is right. Humility will use all of the witnesses of light because they're going to allow the witnesses to lead them, not pride on what they or one individual or a group of people think is right. So, do you bring out the constellations in its season, or do you lead the bear with its sons? Arcturus, known anciently as Ash, and Spica, known as Abib in the past. So, please take the time to get out there and do this, because you have 4 night watches, not just one small little moment with an equinox view with shadows and darkness from an obelisk. You can get out there and see the first watch. You can actually witness it for yourself. You can get into the second watch and start viewing how that moon, fully restored moon, works with the stars right past midnight and into the third watch, because this is a light on a lampstand for all to see, because it shines to all those in the house, because the witnesses of our Father of lights are wonders. This is why our being observes all the witnesses all the way to the end of the third watch. The start of the fourth watch, which is a true scriptural day, starts the morning time period, and that's why we rise before the dawn, and we shua, we cry for help, to learn how to tell time, real time, without all the effort and devices of man, all the way to the end of the fourth watch, which is the sunrise time period. And sometimes, not all the time, the moon greets a fully restored moon, or the closest to being full moon will greet the sun at sunrise, but not in every case in every month, as we shared in many of our scriptural study videos. Again, even the etymology, the study of languages from an empirical standpoint, states that morning, the very first verse of scripture, is the dawn, known as Bakar in the Strong's entry H1242. Please, and all its other associated words, such as bakar, means to seek and inquire. Yes, 4 night watches, seek them all out. Seek that dawn with the stars and the sun, all 3 witnesses of light that were given to us to tell time. Again, when I remember Yahu, our Father of lights, we meditate in all the 4 night watches to tell time. We're not solar-based or just lunar-based. So at the end of the day, it's very simple. The associated words to morning are all about the dawn, shakar. Again, all of the etymological evidence points to the dawn. It's a masculine noun, generally noting the breaking of the day, that time just prior to sunrise. Again, an obelisk won't work. Stonehenge won't work. It's useless. It's non-value added. It doesn't produce fruit. And that's why the start of the year with all vernal equinox-based calendars, again, is non-value added, because it's solar-based. Solar-based. So I don't know how much more we can drive home that point. And even the NAS, but Yahuwah appointed a worm when dawn came the next day, and it attacked the plant and it withered. Every writing from Genesis or Bereshith to the books of Yonah scream out the dawn as the true scriptural start of a day. And please, if you're interested, take a look at this video based on the study of a true scriptural day start entitled The Dawn of Atonement. If you're interested in utilizing all three witnesses of light to tell time. If you're solar based, you will not believe that intelligent design is possible. And as such, you have to explain to somebody why a man-made wristwatch doesn't need three hands to tell time. You're allowed then to take away the second hand, or even the minute hand, or even the hour hand. And who would do that? No one's going to argue with you that a wristwatch was not designed. So, man created the wristwatch with three witnesses of time to tell time. No one takes away any of the witnesses on this piece. Why would anyone dare to be solar-based only and take away the moon, let alone the stars, to tell time? So it's a dilemma for folks that were prepared and educated, programmed, if you will, at a very young age to be solar-based only. It's a shame, but we've all been through it. Do we want to be humbled with what is right? Or do we want to lie to ourselves and act in a manner in which pride is concerned with who is right and make statements such as Mr. Tyson did, a most important feature is the analysis of the information that comes your way. And that's what I don't see enough in this world. We agree with him. If only Mr. Tyson and everyone like him, like it was for us, grow to the point and prepare ourselves with all three witnesses of light and not just be solar-based. We have to search out our minds to see if we are indeed acting on all of the information that is available to tell time. Or are we going to get caught up in the chaos that exists with world religions? They are known as principalities from a scriptural standpoint. So again, chaos is the state of utter disorder and confusion. The land of Babylon, yes, Babel means confusion, chaos. Let's come out of all that chaos and eccentricity. It doesn't produce value. It's not value added. It doesn't produce fruit. So when we get into the scriptural study, remember, the Babylonian calendar was a lunar solar calendar with years consisting of 12 lunar months, each beginning when a new crescent moon was first sighted low on the western horizon at sunset. Yes, the Babylonians invented what is known as syzygy. We're going to get into this now because Babylon is known as a principality. What is a principality as it relates to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12? Well, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 states that we are not to fight against flesh and blood, but this, the beast, that affects the programming, the preparation, the education of young ones, all the way to adulthood to be solar-based. A principality is a state or office or authority of a prince. B, the position or responsibilities of a principal of a school, so to speak. Yes, this beast, it's taking it upon itself to be solar-based, just like Egypt was, or any civilization that we can see the archaeological evidence. Again, all of the millions of man-hours that it took to build these structures, archaeologically, was wasted. You can go outside with the sun, moon, and stars just with your hands and fingers to tell time, to know what time of day a true day start is, to know what the first day of each and every given month is, and to know the true scriptural year, which is not the vernal equinox. It's based on all three witnesses, sun, moon, and stars. And finally, number 2, the territory or jurisdiction of a prince. We all know what Rome is. Rome is the richest organization on earth. It dictates many things to many institutions on earth, whether the education system, all of the world's religious systems, principalities, and its governments. The country that gives title to a prince, remember, Rome is a country within a country. And Italy has definitely given a title to the prince. The Pope is non-scriptural. It's a non-scriptural approach. And Rome is the mother of all of these clubs and movements. 365 only calendar clubs, 364-day calendar clubs, 360-day calendar clubs, and 354-day calendar clubs. Again, we don't have to follow a Nimrod. We don't have to act like a Nimrod. We're not being facetious here. We're not being rude. Either you take the solar-based approach and you take away the witnesses of light that are available to tell time, or you use all of the witnesses of light in that counterclockwise, beautiful movement to produce safety and value, to be profitable, to be fruitful. Again, pride is concerned with who is right. Only Rome will tell you to be solar-based when the scripture says to use all of the evidence empirically. A true scientist that gets outside with a camera to take film and photograph footage. With Neil and this view, and it's not Neil's fault again. We're not attacking Neil. I can't photograph this. I can't film it. I can't test and prove it. I have to trust the education system. I have to trust Rome. And notice, there's no wording on stars here to tell time. Nothing. Where's the moon in all of this? Which I can film and photograph. I don't need an obelisk. I don't need any man-made device. But the world is solar-based, regrettably. It's not humble. It's concerned with who is right. Here's something else. In the book of Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 23, and I quote, "And on the new moon of the first month, and on the new moon of the fourth month, and on the new moon of the seventh month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance." Well, why do we need days of remembrance with the sun, moon, and stars? What is the value? What profitability does this verse tell us? Does it produce safety in regards to the proper agricultural cycle? Does it produce safety in regards to knowing what season we're actually in without the man-made devices of man with obelisks? Notice it goes on to say, "In the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever." And they're written in the heavens. So let's find this out. So the first day of the month, Abib, is a day of remembrance. The first day of the 4th month, the first day of the 7th month, and the first day of the 10th month. Notice the seasons. This is the true spring with the sun, moon, and stars. This is the true summer time period, first day of the 4th month. This is the true fall time period of the 7th month. And this is the true winter time period, being the 10th month. So how does this work? So if you follow the sun, moon, and stars, a fully restored moon with Ursa Major between the 2nd and 3rd watch will be in this position. So meaning the position of this Ursa Major 7-star cluster. The moon will be in its phase of becoming fully restored. And by the dawn, the sun will be out, all 3 witnesses of light. A true day start. Welcome to the first day of the 1st month. After the summer solstice, the first day of the 4th month, Ursa Major will be on its side, letting us know the proper season that we're in. And the fully restored moon, all the way to the dawn, you can photograph and film Ursa Major. You can actually film and photograph this. No obelisks. And again, between the 2nd and 3rd watch, during the fall time period, the first day of the 7th month, known as trumpets, or Yom Teruah, you can take a film and photograph footage with a simple Apple iPhone in this day and age. You don't need obelisks, Stonehenge, or anything. And you can use your fingers on your hand to tell time. And after the winter solstice, the first day of the 10th month is always where it's supposed to be. So we don't need any man-made devices to tell us when it's the spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox, or the winter solstice. We have the sun, moon, and stars to tell us that. And thus the reason why the scriptural cycle, which we call the spiritual harvest cycle, is fully aligned to the heavens. And why the agricultural cycle can be trusted in this view of the sun, moon, and stars, year after year. It's that simple. This is not rocket science. So again, do we trust the Father of Lights and the empirical astronomical witnesses of light that he provides? We are, because it's more reliable. And I don't have to build anything. I just take my hands with my fingers outside to tell time. And I can photograph and film all of this year after year, day after day, month after month. So again, it's not what you think you know, it's what you can scripturally prove in creation is one of the taglines that we've been sharing since 2013, since we came out to explore more of these witnesses as they were designed. No different than a wristwatch. We explored the design of a wristwatch with its three witnesses, second hand, minute hand, and hour hand. We finally got off our butts and got it done, went outside to study in creation the sun, moon, and stars that were given us to tell time for days, years, seasons, appointed times, and signs. So, it's all about choice at this time. Are you going to be a true empirical scientist from an astronomical standpoint? Or are you going to follow or be caught up and gobbled up by this principality? We don't fight against flesh and blood. This is why we're not going to fight against Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's no need. Because he, like the rest of us, were affected by this principality that acts like the principal of a school. We're tired of this school. We are extremely in a position where we're going to fight the beast. We're not going to fight against flesh and blood. We're going to fight against the beast. So all those folks that have come off the Gregorian calendar, again, don't fight against each other. Don't fight against flesh and blood. Fight against the beast. Hallelujah that many are coming off the Gregorian man-made system. It's not about a calendar that hangs on a wall. It's about a calendar and a clock that hangs in the heavens with all three witnesses of light. So, again, we don't need any of this, do we? We don't need to think small, be solar-based. We don't need it. We don't need to follow Nimrod telling us that the first crescent moon after the vernal equinox was the, new year. We don't need that. We've got the sun, moon, and stars, something more valuable, something more profitable that produces fruit, both agriculturally and spiritually. So, again, Mr. Tyson has been very helpful, like all astrophysicists are, because they're far more educated than I will ever be, and there are things that I've learned immensely about them, especially with the Mazzaroth and the individual stars that are in them, and I'll be forever thankful. But I am far more thankful for the training and education that I received on the counterclockwise clock that Scripture talks about. And its counts. I can trust them. I don't have to have pride anymore and argue with anybody who was right and who was wrong. It's irrelevant. I like to take the humility approach and be more concerned with what is right and test and prove it outside with film and photograph footage. It's much more profitable, and it's much more peaceful. So again, this scriptural study video has nothing to do with Neil or Michael being against each other. One just tests all of the evidence and takes film and photograph footage and how they work as a celestial clock, and one is solar-based when it comes to time. That's all. That's all this is. So again, if Neil and the rest of the world only listen to his quote, a most important feature is the analysis of the information that comes your way. Well, yes, Scripture gives you all three witnesses of light on how to tell time, and when a true day starts, and when a true year starts. It's got nothing to do with solar-based sunrise to sunrise, sunset to sunset, or a vernal equinox, solar equinox. It starts your year. So getting the start of a day right and getting the start of your year right, moving away from what is solar-based, from that principality from Rome, is great. And Neil will come on board eventually. He is a scientist. And if he's a true empirical scientist, one day he will indeed use all of the information that comes his way, in which he quotes. He doesn't see enough of people in this world doing that. And in this we fully and wholeheartedly agree. So again, don't rob yourself of the designer and the gifts that he provides. Don't rob yourself. Don't be agnostic. Don't be atheistic. It's a waste of time. Just be an empirical scientist and test and prove what the sun, moon, and stars actually do to tell time. Yes, all three witnesses, no different than a human wristwatch. No one again in their mind will rob the designer of the features of a wristwatch, which used three witnesses to tell time. Just take that simple approach and don't be like Babel. Don't be confusing. Don't be chaotic. It's simple. It's easy. Just use all of the witnesses of light that are in the scriptures and it will take you home and it certainly will provide you peace. So hopefully in this scriptural study, we've done a fairly good job on responding to the Neil deGrasse Tyson video, of which so many of you have asked. Please don't ask me. Ask the Father of Lights. Reason with the Father of Lights. Get outside and see what his sun, moon, and stars actually do to tell time. Quit debating on Skype, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on it goes. Just go outside and allow the Father of Lights to teach you how to tell time, as it states in Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. Again, how Ursa Major proves the length of a scriptural day is extremely easy. You don't have to follow Rome, Babylon, Egypt. All you need is your hands and your fingers. So, let's close this scriptural study video with one final point. And we're going to call this portion of the scriptural study the day in the life of a fully restored moon. How long is a full moon? So let's close this study out with that. Because many of you in the last scriptural study did research. You went outside, and before you went outside, you went on to the astronomical websites that study the moon. And you've seen all of these articles, like this one by Joshua Hawkins, entitled "The Longest Full Moon of 2021 Happens Tomorrow. Here's How to Watch." And that was the last full moon that just passed. Yes, the 9th new moon from this group called BGR. And they stated that sometimes people even refer to this 9th new moon day as the long night moon. The arrival of the winter solstice a few days later is also a part of what makes this longest full moon of the year. So the 9th new moon is always just before the winter solstice. And make a long story short, it's not a day of remembrance. That's why the first day of the 10th month is a day of remembrance. It tells you you're in the true winter time period. So anyways, make a long story short, you asked questions, which was excellent. And we track this. So we go to timeanddate.com. It taught us this years ago. And it talked about the pagan month of December, just before winter is setting in, and the full moon is called the cold moon. It is also called the long night's moon and the moon before Yule. Well, why are they saying this? Well, they know that this moon, the full moon, will be full longer than other full moons in other times of the year. And they give their explanation, which is solar-based. But we're going to share something which is very cool. And we'll go through this now because of the questions. So we track this as well in not just one country or one location in one country. We track this in many locations in various countries all over Earth because Yahuwah's witnesses are wonders. And this is why our being observes them. So the cold moon, the 9th new moon day, was the longest fully restored moon, coming in at 11 hours and 19 minutes. But can we prove this with film and photograph footage, let alone scientifically, empirically, if you will? True science is when you test and prove it. Theoretical science is when you come up with an idea, but it's not yet proven. It's a theory. Nothing wrong with that approach. But again, you can't say it's true until it's tested over and over again, making it empirical science. That basic. So in my area, the moon became 100% illuminated on the pagan day of Saturday, December 18th, 2021 at 5:52 p.m. and stopped being full the following day on the pagan day of Sunday, December 19th at 5:11 a.m. So what is so important about this? The full moon does not recognize man-made horizon lines on apps, including Stellarium. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Again, a day start is at the dawn. So the international date line is irrelevant. The meridian line on stellarium is irrelevant. The Greenwich meridian line, is irrelevant. All of these things are irrelevant when it comes to the sun, moon, and stars. It does what it does on its own without man-made lines or man-made devices. So as we can see, you go to timeanddate.com and you take that start time and finish time, and it produces 11 hours and 19 minutes. That's how that number is calculated. And of course, we don't like to test and prove with just one approach. We take 2 or 3 witnesses empirically to compare to see if that's what it's saying. So if you go to the WLC system, it's a great system of measuring time. It's regrettably only lunar solely. Solar, it only uses 2 witnesses. So the start time of the moon becoming 100% was 5:42. The finish time was the following day, the pagan day of the 19th of December at 5:01 a.m. So what did that produce? 11 hours and 19 minutes of total full illumination time. So some people say, well, that's not true. I don't believe that. But if you go back to the 8th month, which was, as everyone knows, we experienced a lunar eclipse in the 8th month, and that produced, the moon was fully restored for 11 hours and 16 minutes. But some people say the moon is only, for a few seconds, fully restored at 100% illuminated. But if that is true then, from an astronomical empirical standpoint, why then can we measure right to the second how long a moon on a lunar eclipse will be in its phase of a lunar eclipse? So here's Perth, Western Australia, the 8th new moon. It was all the way from 6:57 p.m. And then finished at 8:03, as you can see here. Y then was Anaheim, California. Its duration, 6 hours and 1 minute. Y was Dallas, Texas, 6 hours and 1 minute. Y was Rio de Janeiro, 2 hours and 44 seconds. So we can actually measure the illumination of the moon in a lunar eclipse, let alone in its phases, all the way up to the full total time of a fully restored moon. And we can even know the locations on Earth where it won't be visible, a lunar eclipse, if you will. Again, have you ever heard the saying, confusion is a word we have invented for an order which is not yet understood? Welcome to Babel. See, Babel makes you solar focused. And that approach doesn't get you to study out empirically, from a scientific standpoint, the other witnesses. Well, when it comes to the full moon being fully restored, not just for a few seconds, but a longer period of time every given month, this is where confusion comes from for this particular subject, because it takes away from all of the witnesses. But again, can we prove that? So this is where this babble comes from. So where does the babble come from? Well, some people take timeanddate.com, and you can actually pull up on timeanddate.com for a whole year each of the phases of the moon. So yes, the first quarter, the new moons, which regrettably the world thinks it's a conjunction, and then a third quarter. Basically, these are half moons. It's regrettable they call them quarters as well. And then the full moon. So here we are on the last full moon that has just passed. And as we know, the full moon day started at the dawn. So our Sabbath will be on the pagan day of Sunday. Take a look. It says 11:35. So everyone thinks, oh, only that minute, 11:35, that is when the moon is only full at 100% illumination. But again, presumptuous folks don't test and prove. And this is why we on this YouTube channel are horrified to be presumptuous. We don't want to be presumptuous in any shape, form, or manner. So we test and prove everything. We don't want to be ruled over by presumptuous ones. We want to stay away. It's dangerous to be presumptuous. So again, just email timeanddate.com. And here's my email. And we are in constant dialogue with timeanddate.com, mooncalc.org, moonphase, and they're wonderful. And they respond on the training that they've been given, just like Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. So here was my question. On your monthly moon phase page, timeanddate.com, you show all of the phases for a given month and specific locations, which is an excellent feature. Under the full moon phase, you are showing a specific time for each month. Does the individual times by month represent the full moon at its midpoint time period, meaning that it reflects the middle point of the moon becoming full from its starting point, and as well being the midpoint to the full moon finishing its full moon phase? Thank you in advance. So again, I take the approach of proving all things. I don't like to assume. I don't enjoy being presumptuous. And here is the response by Konstantin Bikos, the webmaster from timeanddate.com. Hello, thank you for your great email. Great to hear that you like our moon pages. The time we display for the full moon phase refers to the moment when the moon is aligned with the sun and earth. He takes a Neil Tyson approach, a Roman solar approach, a Babylonian solar approach, an Egyptian solar approach, the moon being at the opposite side of the sun as seen from the earth. Similarly, the time for new moon refers to the exact opposite side of the moon's orbit between sun and earth. So in a way, the full moon does represent the midpoint between two new moons. However, the moon is on an elliptical oval path around the earth, which means that it doesn't move at a constant speed, but accelerates and decelerates during the course of a lunar month. For that reason, the time from new moon to full moon does not equal the time from full moon to the next new moon. So he's not even understanding the question because he doesn't even observe a fully restored full moon. So the answer is yes and no. So again, he takes the view of a solar-based approach. He doesn't take the view of how Ursa Major moves around the Polaris. He's not investigating each of these witnesses with what the sun does with its witnesses and the moon, let alone stars. And besides, we have tons of film and photograph footage of this phenomena, that the fully restored new moon is not a small moment of time in seconds and or even just minutes. It's hours. And here's a photograph from last month from Arkansas, Texas. Again, thank you, Travis, for this, proving that once again a full moon is indeed a fully restored moon, and it shines the whole night through so that all in the house can actually see it. And again, it shines the whole night through with a set of scriptural stars every individual or particular scriptural month, telling us what season we're in alignment with Ursa Major. And the past month, yes, the first day of the 9th month, the star cluster known as Cassel or Orion rules the night, along with the moon, just as the psalmist Tehillim, chapter 136, verse 9 had stated. So make a long story short, we do this with many folks in Torrance Barrens trails and dark sky preserve or reserve, and with folks that just don't use an iPhone. An iPhone can test and prove it very easily, but as well, these telescopic cameras and video cameras, if you will, show it very well. And it's so wonderful to see so many coming out with their families and their children, showing them what the sun, moon, and stars actually do now. So they've invested time, and they test and prove. They don't presume, and they get out there and get it done. So if you get the opportunity to hang out with some folks that have this type of equipment, and you've got someone foolishly, presumptuously telling you that the full moon is only a full moon for a few seconds or a few minutes, get them to do the full work. Love them. Have patience with them. They'll be fine. They'll come around in time as well. So again, we thank the folks at Quick Phase Pro for letting us know and their understanding that the full moon, this last 9th full moon, was 11 hours and 19 minutes. And we thank the folks at WLC as well that confirmed that too. And even the folks at mooncalc.org over the years for proving that to us. Again, folks, just don't use an app or a computer program web link and don't follow up with the webmasters. Find out how they do these actual visuals, find out what their algorithms are, and it's easy to do. It's under what's called the Help and API function, and it shares with you how they come up with their visuals. Remember, they all admit their visuals are not fully 100% accurate in regards to the visual. As for the time and the total witnesses of light and the time they reveal themselves, they've got that nailed. But again, this is why this is well known worldwide, and why you've seen the articles on it last full moon, and why we track it every month. So not just 1 month, and why timeanddate.com realizes why the full moon is called the long moon, even though their webmaster was struggling. Now, Stellarium is a different animal. Stellarium is a program that wants to be everything to everyone. So they have bit off a big challenge because they attempt to visualize all of the sun, moon, and stars. It's a great program, don't get me wrong. But when you get a hold of their webmasters, they say, be forewarned about the imaginary man-made horizon line. It's based off of the longitude and latitude that they have chosen, not necessarily the longitude and latitude that that individual lives or resides in that particular location on Earth. So that's very problematic, number one. Number two, some people use the meridian line on this, or the Greenwich timeline. Again, those are man-made lines. We highly suggest that you don't utilize those lines, and especially with the conjunction moon people and the crescent moon people, they say that you're not considering the international dateline. Well, the sun, moon, and stars have nothing to do with man-made lines. Why would they be? So when you see people trying to squeeze you into that corner, especially for anything to do with the sun, moon, and stars from a scriptural standpoint, then you know the poor individual has fallen off the edge of the earth, so to speak. So again, when you see this on Stellarium for percent illumination, they also agree that the moon does not only show up 100% fully illuminated for a couple seconds or minutes, but they will also admit that they're not as accurate on that reading. And they came up with the 9th month, 10 hours and 47 minutes, as compared to mooncalc.org, QuickPhase Pro, WLC at 11 hours and 19 minutes. So again, do your homework. Be an empirical scientist. Test and prove all of it and follow up with them. They're just human beings, and they're willing to have these discussions. If you truly want to search out truth, test and prove how all things actually work. So again, the 9th month, the first day of the 9th month, fully restored moon was 11 hours and 19 minutes, as tested and proven with film and photograph footage. And again, for those folks that just use the time and date app with that small little midpoint time, this is why we said it's the midpoint, and we can prove that. So on the WLC and QuickPhase Pro, it had a start time and it had a finish time. 11:35 is in the middle. It's the midpoint of these two times. And you can check this out for all locations on Earth. Again, we do more than one location. And that's how we test and prove this. So again, you're going to get a few folks out there that are going to stick to this for a little while more. They'll leave this too once they really get it together and do a full test and prove like others are doing. So anyways, that puts that to bed. But let's look at this from a visual standpoint, and hopefully these visuals are getting better and we are doing a better job. So the moon on the pagan day of December 18th, 2021 became 100% illuminated in my area. And this was during the day period. So in the fourth watch, as we know, the end of the third watch, the start of the fourth watch, is the true start of a scriptural day. Why do we know that? Because the sun, moon, and stars, during the dawn time period right here, you can still see them. So you can tell time with all three witnesses of light. The star piece of it goes away. And this is the morning time period. And then sunrise happens right here. As you know, as the moon is setting in the west and the sun is rising in the east. So the moon became full during the daytime period at 5:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And by the first watch, still it was the 30th day, 8th month. It wasn't yet the first day of the 9th month. We're still on the pagan day, December or Saturday, December 18th, and we can't see the stars yet in the first watch. There's too much sunlight. By the second watch, which we're still on the 30th day of the 8th month, again, an international date line has nothing to do with this. And watch how this works. So by 11:35 p.m. on the timeanddate.com, that's the midpoint. And as we said in Scripture, it's getting close to the point where it's the highest in the Shamayim, and it's shining the brightest for all in the house to see. And not only that, people took pictures of Orion throughout the second, third, and just at the start of the fourth watch. We do this every month, and for a 9th month, Orion is the particular cluster that the moon rules with. So that's the midpoint from timeanddate.com. The moon is not just full for that one period of time. And then, going into the third watch, the moon stopped being 100% full at 5:01 a.m. Again, meridian lines, horizon lines, man-made horizon lines on computer apps, has nothing to do with the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah, including the international dateline. But there's going to be a few out there that are going to do the Johnny Carson two-step and be silly on this for a while more. And that's okay. Help them, love them, have patience, the scriptural fruit of the Spirit. And then by the fourth watch, the start of a scriptural day, I rise before the dawn, when we still can see Ursa Major and its two sons, and the moon still ruling with Orion. Many people took pictures of that time period, like they did for a first day 9th month this year and years previous. We've been doing this live and outside in dark sky preserves since 2013. And then the star piece goes away, and we're still in the morning time period. Still not, the sunlight time period. And for this particular month, the 9th month, first day of the 9th month, the moon did indeed greet the sun at sunrise in my area, which for all new moon days, that doesn't happen always. So anyways, that's how this works. It's not complicated. And all you need is your hands and your fingers. And I'm not trying to sound facetious or cynical, but please, you don't need obelisks. You don't need Stonehenge. You don't need millions of man-hours to do this. If you just use all of the witnesses on a wristwatch, the second hand, minute hand, and hour hand, you'll be able to tell accurate time. If you use the sun, moon, and stars in the Shamayim, all of them as they were designed in the 4 watches to tell time, then this will all come together for you quite easily. There'll be no babble. There'll be no confusion, if you will. So again, they call this, the Earth going around the sun, syzygy order. And there's many subject pieces to syzygy order, because it's not the same as Ursa Major going around the North Star or Polaris in relation to what the sun and moon do to tell time, all 3 witnesses. Syzygy order is something based on pride and not humility, or the approach, the differences in the approach with a pride-based approach versus a humility-based approach. Here's why. Again, the Babylonian calendar was a lunar solar calendar with years consisting of 12 lunar months, each beginning when a new crescent moon was first sighted low on the western horizon at sunset. Welcome to the original syzygy model. So, again, a solar-based alone, equinox-based system is, again, it's got nothing to do with the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah, just like Stonehenge. So what's so bad about syzygy and the 100% illuminated, fully restored new moon? What's the relationship there? Well, it's seeping into some of the full moon believers, regrettably. Because if you think the moon is only illuminated for a few seconds, or a few minutes only, this is what's called, on some websites, as syzygy order. Notice the view. It's not how the sun, moon, and stars work. It's something else entirely. It's a solar-based view. So study out syzygy a little bit more. Syzygy. I always say that wrong. It's the alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth leaves the side of the moon that faces the earth in darkness. This is called a conjunction or syzygy. This is why all the conjunction moon people constantly try to fight the flesh with me when they don't have to. This is a solar-based view that originated in Babylon. If you don't believe me, find out what Gnosticism has to do in relation to syzygy. You'll be shocked. But again, it seeped into some of the full moon believers, and it's not their fault. We're not judging. We don't strive or struggle with the flesh. We take the humble approach and use all of the evidence with the sun, moon, and stars, and we don't take this solar syzygy order view. We don't take it. You don't have to take it either. Again, you don't need obelisks and Stonehenge. You just need your fingers and your hands. So, I know this doesn't go over with some. We are not trying to attack anybody because we have no interest in struggling and or striving with the flesh. The fight is against principalities that ensure that they take away witnesses. So if it was up to the RCC or the beast of today, the Roman Catholic Church, that has inherited Babylon's thought process and Egypt's thought process, they would remove witnesses from a simple wristwatch because that's what they've done with the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah. They've taken away witnesses with the moon and the stars. They're solar-based only. So again, design demands a designer. No one can dismantle that. They're going to attempt to do so. And again, you have to have scriptural love and patience. They'll come on board. It'll all work out in time. So again, the search for truth takes you where the evidence leads you. Even if, at first, you don't want to go there. Did I want to go there when I was being told this many years ago, 20 years ago? I had to get outside and test and prove this for myself because I was solar-based. I was educated from that principality that schools everyone with syzygy order and international dateline theories and blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous, right? So at the end of the day, we decided not to be presumptuous anymore, to stay away from it, and those who practice those methodologies. Because remember, the word Babel from Babylon is confusion. It's a word we have invented for an order which is not yet understood. We understand syzygy order, and we want nothing to do with it anymore. If you want to be presumptuous, you have that right to follow that chaos or Babel. That's between you and the Father of Lights. Again, pride is concerned with who is right. And humility is concerned with what is right. And I quote Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. A most important feature is the analysis of the information that comes your way. And that's what I don't see enough in this world. Again, in this we wholeheartedly agree. Just use all of the witnesses of light from our Father of Lights with his sun, moon, and stars to tell time. No different than using 3 witnesses in a wristwatch. Don't take anything away. So this was the reason, these 2 bullet points, for this particular scriptural study video. And again, we can only hope that we've done a great job in explaining it. It's taken us many years. You don't just turn this information and knowledge on with a light switch. You have to go and test and prove it day after day, month after month, week after week, if you will. And so, again, as it is with all of our scriptural study videos, we continue to pray and call upon the name, Palal, if you will, on the name of Yahuwah, our Father of Lights, the only self-existent one, that these scriptural study videos are providing value to you and your loved ones. And let me close with this final thought again as it relates to value. And it is this. You can take a solar-based view with syzygy order, or you can take a celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah view that ignores the Babel order, where Ursa Major goes around the North Star in 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09 seconds per day. And the start of a scriptural day is the dawn because you can prove it with all 3 witnesses of light. Notice this view does not state that. So again, having a pride-based view will not utilize all of the witnesses to tell time. A more humble approach will produce more value, safety, and will be productful, meaning produce fruit as it relates to timekeeping. And that also means in the following manner, knowing our 4 divisions of the year, because the sun, moon, and stars were designed to tell us what season we were in as it relates to the true spring, summer, fall, and winter time period. And as we shared, the moon and stars rule the night, and if you know a true scriptural day start, all of this comes together quite easily. And as a result, you don't need obelisks, you don't need Stonehenge, you don't need the oppression of humankind to build all of these aids to tell time. It's a waste of time to do all that work. All you need is your hands and your fingers with this method. It's more efficient. It's more cost-effective, if you will. So again, we are not delusional. We know the majority of people on earth won't come to this. It's not of their interest. They're not empirical. So again, from a scriptural standpoint, all of the agricultural cycle as it relates to the feast fits nicely into this, and the scriptural writings, let alone what you can test and prove with film and photograph footage month after month. So very basic and not confusing at all. Remember, the annual agricultural harvest cycle is aligned to the scriptural spiritual harvest cycle. We are part, as Neil would put it, and thank you, we are part of the cosmos. Understand what the cosmos are made of, then you'll find out your actual body makeup from a biological standpoint. We are part of the cosmos in our very design and our very creation from the ultimate designer. Yes, the Father of lights, who provides the sun, moon, and stars and gives us every good gift and every perfect gift which is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of turning. So at the end of the day, it's not what we think we know, but it's what we can actually scripturally prove in creation. And we can do that with the actual accounts, with the witnesses of light, which have been tried and tested and proven month after month. Or you can follow Babel, the confusion, syzygy order, and follow the principle, as in a school, from Rome. Again, we are not interested in striving and struggling or fighting with the flesh. We're taking the fight to the beast. And if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us at family1@rogers.com. And there are many peaceful ways in doing that. We do not utilize the celestial clock and calendar of Yahuwah as a weapon. So, that is it for this particular scriptural study. All the best to you and your loved ones in the name of the Almighty Father of Lights, Yahuwah himself, the only self-existent one. So until next time, Yahuwah willing, may the Messiah Yahushua be in everything we say and do. All the best, everyone.